Professor David Simmons to address us on the New Zealand Eden project, Mountains to the Sea.
Your Worship, Councillors, thank you for inviting us here this morning. I'm just going to digress just slowly, if I may, Your Worship, and just say that
you can call me Leanne.
Leanne.
David.
I prefer to call you that. And that is just to say, in terms of that last presentation, I think that's outstanding.
Yeah.
And you know that the government has 10 national science challenges. I'm on the interim governance group to Resilience to Nature's Challenge. And what they're looking for is not more science about when things are going to happen, but about societal resilience. Yeah. I think this can be socialised nationally. I think if we could develop the templates from that, and again, Christchurch show leadership in that space. So I was just going to say that I think that is exactly how I understand resilience, and good on them for doing it.
I'll respond to that, so since we're sort of completely off the subject, but
already.
Because one of the recommendations that came from the independent review of the civil defence response to the February earthquake was that the community groups that responded, and I mean that included the Student Volunteer Army and community groups like Actus and Littleton Project and all of those, that they were to be brought together so that they could design a range of community response templates themselves as community groups. But in actual fact, what happened was that they were brought together and asked to provide their ideas to the organisation to take them away to develop. And so the essence of the recommendation was lost, but I don't think that we have lost the opportunity. And we can see here one community group that has some pre-existing social capital, which is it has translated into action in a post-disaster environment. And that is the learning we have to capture, and not just for our city, but for the nation as a whole. So, totally with you. And if we're going to be part of that science challenge, we would love to, play a very proactive role.
We'll pick that up somewhere else.
Excellent.
Well, hey, we're here to, so my name is David Simmons. I have two jobs. I'm the Director of Research Strategy at Lincoln University, and I'm Professor of Tourism, but the first job is so big that it makes me largely the Professor of Nocturnal Tourism. But what I want to talk to you about today is the big idea, and we mentioned this to Leanne yesterday. It's something we have been working on quietly for 2.5 years, and we are going public at 10:30 this morning, immediately following this. So this is the big idea for regenerating the red zone. It's based on community events, science, education and experience, and importantly, redeveloping Christchurch as a global visitor destination. And I'll just come to some of those points as we go through. But Eden is a hard concept to get hold of. So this was a clay pit in Cornwall. Cornwall's got a population of 400,000. They moved it from this to this. And it is England's #1 tourist attraction. It has 1 million visitors a year. It's poured $13 billion into the Cornwall economy in the space of a decade, and it is big. Our question is, well, they started with, can we take the world's most sterile place and turn it into something that tells us how to live sustainably, that brings science and people and resilience and empowerment together? My question is, can we go from this? The answer is, well, to what? But it obviously has to deal with water, it has to deal with flat land, and I think if you look at the roof on the top of the other building, it's limited only by our imagination. And so we can harness the science and the communities of what we've got here to turn this around. So Eden UK, at about the same time as the earthquakes, took a decision to internationalise their product and brand. I'm just going to show you a few seconds into this clip because it's on Evan's wonderful site, and I know after the meeting you'll all rush out and have a look at it. But this was the biggest building site in Europe at the time. The founder is Sir Tim Smith.
What is Eden about? It's not about us, this group of people here, driving the change that we need to see in order to live in better balance. It's about us being a catalyst. It's about actually stimulating and inspiring people to say, I could live differently, or I could know my neighbours differently, I could share things differently, I could work differently, and really unleashing their own individual power.
These are the great challenges of our time, but life without challenge is meaningless anyway. And this is our generation's chance to rise to the 21st century.
I believe in people. I believe that almost everybody that walks the earth is actually good, in inverted commas. They want to do the right thing. They feel perhaps they don't have a sense of belonging. If you can create a sense of belonging that's not religious, but is to do with a shared vision as something that we can all buy into, I don't think you've even scratched the surface of the power that humans have got.
Sake of time, I'll just leave that. But Evan's got it up for us. He's the man in the space on the Eva Notakaro network and the Evo space. So, what's the big issue that we are pursuing for this big idea? Well, one is poor tourism performance. So Ray and I both work in the tourism sector. We were technical advisors to the City Council's original tourism and visitor strategy. And Ray has done a lot of work in that space since the earthquake. But fundamentally, we're tracking about 24% below in visitor numbers, and it looks like the demand curve has been bumped about 12 years. So the government's official forecast for 2019 put us 165,000 international visitors below where we were in 2010. Now, what the rebuild needs is an iconic attraction. Community and convention centre both need Eden, and just sort of between that and the next step, attractions are the original grain of sand around which the destination pearl grows. So look at the images on the right, and most of us, I would imagine, recognise more than half of them. The pyramids, the Eiffel Tower, the Statue of Liberty, Grand Central Park, the new ones, Harbours on the Bay, in Garden on the Bay in Singapore, and modern destinations evolve around a strong iconic image that speaks to the heart of who they are. So we'll hear Sir Tim say we shouldn't look past, we should look to the future and look to the opportunity provided by the earthquakes. We have formed over the last 2.5 years a genuine partnership with Ihu Tai Ahu Whenua Trust and Ngāi Tahu. I had a wonderful story the other day. A Maori told us that our original farms were the rivers. This is Mahinga Kai. We looked after them and they fed us. The Pākehā have come and done the same to the land. They've used that as their garden, as their farm. We need to step forward into the place where they're both farms for us. So we won't be copying Eden in the sense that they tell the story of plants and human life. Our story is ki uta ki tai, from the mountains to the sea, the role of water in human life. And boy, have we got some scraps in this part of the world over water, but they only scratch the surface of some other places like Africa or parts of the tropics and other places. And for those of you who watch the national science space, as I must do in my other job, the government released a paper last week, Sir Peter Gluckman's big idea about citizen science. We can't as a nation continue to spend $1.2 billion a year on research, on research and science, unless we take the people with us. We can't achieve our conservation goals unless we are all responsible. We can't achieve our water goals unless everybody is in that walker at the same time. I was going to say it's a gin shot, but it might be a water shot, so I'll move on. So we've been going through the initiation phase, and we have been cautious under the guidance we have received from Sarah, because the red zone residential land, where we want to put this, where we are determined to put it, has been highly contentious. But during this period we have formed a trust, the Water for Life Trust. We have formed a very strong relationship with Ihu Tai Ngāi Tahu through Ricky, who's unfortunately recently passed, and Nuk Karako. We have formed a partnership and an arrangement with Eden UK, which gives us, in a sense, exclusive rights to develop this idea, not just in New Zealand, but New Zealand and Australia. The first time we mentioned this nationally, someone suggested it would be good in Auckland. We nipped that one off in the bud very early on, and we are working closely with the Avon Otakaro network. This is so big, but only the same size as a covered stadium or a convention centre, that we really want to do a preliminary project investigation. We need to spend a certain percentage of the total budget making sure we understand demand, because this will only get across the national threshold, not just if we steal visitors from Dunedin or do something locally. We have to be such an icon that Australians and people across the world, the new emerging markets, come here to hear about our science endeavours, how we lead our lives, and whether this brand, 100% pure, actually has enough substance behind it. So we're at the stage of preliminary project evaluation, and then these things, just other bits, just trickle on into the distance. I'm the ideas guy. We'll have people who do numbers and things later on. The first big issue that we've been waiting on is land, and we're given up holding our breath waiting for Sarah to show our hand on that, but we're telling them we think this is a really good idea, and we're going to take the community and the leaders of the community with us on this journey. Immediate objectives. Eden are going to come out here in November, and we've been speaking to Eric in particular, for whose time and work we're very grateful, and Leanne and her team about how we just sponsor that low key. In terms of Lincoln University, ELT has empowered me to be a sort of free agent in this regard. They may regret that, but meanwhile I've got the ball and I'm running. We're not going to kick it to the opposition, so we want to develop strong community support for New Zealand Eden. We want to gain allocation from the red zone, and we're declaring our hand. We want to build this on the Avon Loop, the anchor between what's happening in the city and the things that cascade magnificently through communities, across ecosystem services, the pilot Mahinga Kai site out to the sea, to Ihutai, the nose of the estuary itself. And of course, immediate objective is let's be robust about the business case. We're not going to die in the ditch in it, but I haven't heard anyone who's even said maybe, certainly not anyone who said no yet. I just want to pause and go the other side for one moment. I think it's our second or third to last slide. And it is, what is the risk if the opportunity, not is not built, but is not evaluated? We miss the opportunity to provide an attraction of which the people of Christchurch will be proud. We miss, and we get an undeveloped and poor performing tourism sector. And the airport, I guess, for all sorts of business reasons, has now called itself the Gateway. I grew up in and around farms, and most gates we opened and stepped through. But Christchurch is losing, at the moment, to Queenstown. Queenstown is growing gangbusters. It's got direct flights, and Christchurch is becoming a sort of a wee bit marginalised in tourist flows, but it is certainly not a hands-up national destination, nor a hands-up global destination. So there is no small in this. This is a think big project, a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to do something really inspiring. So we also shore up any social and economic loss for the community and businesses. So we're back to this. What does it take to go from that on the left to something really exciting, designed with and for young people, designed around the business community and designed around the communities on the right-hand side of that page? And we did have one little media question about, have you got any sketches? No, because we don't have all the answers, but we do have the School of Landscape Architecture at Lincoln, and hopefully CPIT working jointly on this between architecture and landscape architecture for a project next year, and they can design it. They're the people who live with us. We're just a couple of grumpy old buggers who have spent most of our working lives here. So we're thinking about what gets left behind when we turn to grains of sand. Okay, so this is who we are. Ray here, myself, I'm the noisy one. Nuk Korako from Ihutai Ahu Whenua Trust. Jane George from Becca. Becca have been an enormous support in this. Fletchers and Warren and Marnie. So we've got design, build, construct, science, education and tourism all in there, and we are slowly reaching out to see how much dust we can gather on this. So here we are, the mountains to the sea. Ray is the fall guy for this.
Hello, here we are at the Eden Project in Cornwall, a long way away from our friends in New Zealand and Christchurch. And we've been hearing about the exciting project that you're planning on the river in Christchurch. And we're really excited about what we've heard today. We believe that it could be a really important, not only a tourism destination, but a place that celebrates the culture of the native New Zealanders and the emerging environmental movement that is coming out of New Zealand right now. And symbolically coming out of, if you like, the ruins of the most dreadful earthquake that you had there. I think there is something symbolically very powerful about a collaboration between two countries, two individuals here who feel passionately about creating things that have a narrative about a positive future rather than a negative past. So I'm just here to say to anybody who's watching this, we are really, really keen to work with you, very excited about the potential, and the most important thing of all of it is that we don't work with people we don't like, and we like this man, and we think that New Zealand is fabulous. So we look forward to seeing you very, very soon.
Well, so Tim, look, it's been great to visit. So that's who we are and where we're going. Welcome to the journey.
Yeah, yeah, I want to clap too. I've met with David and Ray quite some time ago in the early stages when this was, and I think even before I was the mayor. And so, but it's interesting because part of the reason that the residential red zone, public conversation hasn't happened yet in Christchurch City, so it's being launched today out in Waimakariri for their residential red zone, is because, as a city we have some urgent and pressing needs around stormwater and around our land drainage system, and also around stop banks and roads. So there are some challenging issues for us, and we didn't really want to commence the public engagement around the residential red zone before some of these other issues were resolved first, so that we actually knew which areas we were talking about. But the community has kind of led the way in the Christchurch City side, which of course we appreciate and value very much as a council, as we heard from that previous submission, not sitting around waiting for somebody to come and tell them how to organise an emergency response plan, but actually just driven from the community itself, and then they come and brief us about what they've done. And so, Eastern Vision and the Avanotakaru network, they have worked quite collaboratively with their communities to start a public engagement and a sort of a putting some of these ideas on the table, and to know that that's being launched on their website at the Evo space. I thought that it was really important that you be given an opportunity to tell us what you were doing and how that was engaging with the community engagement. So I'm really pleased that you were able to do it. So we haven't really got time for questions, but I'll take two. I'll take them from the two councillors who represent the Avon Loop, so Yanni and then Paul.
Well, thank you. It is really exciting. It just dawned on me that in the blueprint, Ngāi Tahu have a cultural centre going into Victoria Square, and yet what you're talking about is probably just as much important for cultural significance. So has there been any conversation with Ngāi Tahu and with Sarah over maybe changing the blueprint and actually looking at what you could do in the Avon Loop? I didn't get a sense of where Ngāi Tahu fitted in or where Sarah was.
Yeah, good. Well, we've been meeting with Sarah pretty regularly, probably every fortnight or month. This is the leaders for this in Ngāi Tahu are Ihu Tai Ahu Whenua Trust, who have an extant claim under the Ngāi Tahu settlement from the Waitangi Tribunal, and they are keen to, in a sense, gift or partner with us on any land that they may secure under the red zone designation. The three pois, and we believe there was an original par, showing my age, where the star and garter used
That's
to
right.
be.
Yeah.
And so I think those discussions are still not settled. But Ngāi Tahu is aware of this, Tront is aware of it. We're speaking to Te Marino Lenahan, who spent 2 hours with us the other day. So I think Ngāi Tahu are still sort of thinking about the best ways of representing things. So I don't want to speak on their behalf, but they are now well aware of this. They're aware of the cultural sites in the river. They're aware of the significance of Mahinga Kai, and I think it's for them to work through the process and endorse which of a number of options they might have.
Paul?
I just want to say thank you very much. I think what you've actually highlighted here is that Christchurch is going to become, have a future with the tourism sector. We need something of scale and importance. And as a council, we own a huge amount of tourism infrastructure, probably more than anyone else. And it's really important that we make that work. And I think this project is actually brought to light. We need to start thinking about these sort of things now, so we can actually have a future for our city. And I just want to say thanks very much for bringing it along and highlighting it.
No, because we'll come back. I mean, obviously, this is going to be the beginning of a conversation that's going to go on. But I mean, the one word for me is just legacy. You know, it's a legacy for the city that if it is able to be realised, then it will, I think, capture the imagination of everyone. So thank you very much for coming brief. I'm sorry, but we really haven't got time. So yeah, but thank you very much.
Yes,
and I know that we're going to be seeing a lot more of you.
Yes,
so,
indeed. Yeah.
So thank you.
Cheers. Thank you. Thanks for the time.
Right, now would somebody like to move that the supplementary reports be included in the agenda for today? That's Phil Clearwater and Andrew Turner.